My name is Janice Masur, and I'm Jewish, and I used to live in Uganda from 1949 until 1961. My parents came to Uganda after they met in Haifa, which at that time was Palestine. I was born in Asmara, Eritrea, and we came to Uganda when I was 5 years old. The Jewish community at that time was very small. There were some Holocaust people, Jews who had come. There was one or two Jews who had been in Koja camp because they were Polish and had come with the British, and the British had looked after them and put them into what we called a refugee camp on the shores of Lake Victoria. And then there were others like my father who didn't have enough money to pay the head tax to stay in Kenya, and so he had to come to Uganda. We were about 23 families, give or take, maybe 63 to 67 individuals. We had about 17 Jewish children born during that period. We had 4 weddings, none of them with a rabbi, and each time it was a Jewish man marrying a non-Jewish woman, with the exception of one. We had very little support from the point of view that we had no rabbi, no synagogue, and no Torah. Nairobi in Kenya was the mother lode, so we looked to Nairobi for sending us matzahs in the early days, maybe just 14 or 16 packets of matzah, whereas in Nairobi they had many more. A few newsletters, monthly newsletters, whereas in Nairobi they had more. They had a rabbi in Nairobi. They had the ability to kosher meat from Jewish farms in the Nakuru, Nairobi area. We had nothing like that. But we were very tight group, very closely knit. If a child came to the school, the teacher would say, "Here is a Jewish child," and I would say to my parents, "A new Jewish family has come," and that is how we got to know who was Jewish and who wasn't. On one occasion, my father saw a man walking down the main street in Kampala, and he stopped, and he said, "I think you might be Jewish," and the man said, "How did you guess?" So it was an unusual thing for a Jew to be in Kampala. Many of the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur services were held in my parents' house. Also, when Chief Judge Joseph Herbstein from South Africa came to Kampala fundraising for the Jewish appeal, that event was held in my parents' house. There was a Jewish Governor General who was called Sir Andrew Cohen, who came from an aristocratic Jewish family in London, and he was the first governor in Uganda who did not take from Uganda, but tried to give to Uganda and actually initiated the beginnings of independence. And for that, he had to ask the Kabaka to leave. Sir Andrew Cohen was also very instrumental in getting Makerere College going in the way that it is today. And he was very, very adamant about education for all African people in Uganda. In later years, we had events at the hotel, and I later learned that it was owned by that, who is also the person who built luxury apartments on top of the Jewish cemetery. The Jewish cemetery is no more. My uncle is buried there. The grandmother of a friend of mine who now lives in Cape Town is buried there. There is another burial from a man who was an East Indian and was brought to Uganda for work, and he married a Polish woman from Koja, and he is buried there too. So very few very few. I don't know all of the people who died and were buried there, but I wanted to commemorate my Jewish community. Last century, the Abayudaya were not known. Only by an inner circle of 3 or 4 men in my community who came here, provided money and education and some books. But when I was doing my research and I said, and what do you know about the Abayudaya? What's Abayudaya? They had no idea. So now, in this century, as you can see, the Abayudaya are flourishing beautifully, as are they are conservative, as you may know. There are also 2 or 3 Orthodox groups in the same area in Putti. And who knows about my Jewish community? Even the Chabad rabbi in Kampala today had no idea of the cemetery and had no idea that there had been a Jewish community here. The same with Aryeh Oded, who was an Adonite Jew, who was actually a diplomat for Uganda. He came, I think, in 1962, and he made contact with the Abayudaya, and he thought he was the first person to make contact with the Abayudaya. In actual fact, it had been a man called Victor Franco, who was from Egypt and a Sephardic Jew, Phil Leviton, who is the son of Moshe Leviton, who I believe in 1921 or thereabouts was instrumental in helping the Abayudaya learn about Judaism.
You were born in Asmara.
Yes.
That is Eritrea.
Yes.
You came to Uganda which year?
1949.
1949. So, did you know about the African Jews by then, or you just knew about the families where you were living?
No, when I did my research, and I asked Dr. Luda, who had come to Uganda with his wife and 1 child, another child was born here, and he did a lot of work with African children upcountry, is what we called it then. And when I said to him, what do you know about the Abayudaya? He said, what Abayudaya? I asked another woman called Valora Moscovich, who was very active in the Jewish community, the white European Jewish community, and she said she had never heard of the Abayudaya. It wasn't the thing to do to have black Jews at that time. I don't mean to sound unpolitical or discriminatory, but it was not done. I believe that J.J. Kekki went to Nairobi to ask for help and was shunned because he was black.
You've met J.J. Kekki?
I didn't meet him. I just read about him. There are some parts of the literature that talk about no Jews in Uganda, and in fact, the Jewish Commonwealth, it's an organization, I can't think of the correct name right now, but I have a document that was written in 1987, a copy in my book, saying there is no Jewish community in Uganda. That excludes even the Abayudaya then. So I tried to refute that in my book and say, yes, there are. Now they are flourishing. My community is not available anymore. It vanished into the diaspora, Jewish diaspora, but the Abayudaya are flourishing. Thank you very much.